And city staff.
Kevin Thurman, Nicolette Fike, David Stroud, and Gordon Miner.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
She didn't have a microphone, so.
So I've left all the mics on, so it'll be a little easier to take care of that tonight. And let's get right into it. This is a public meeting, and because of that, we have set aside some time for public input. If you have any concerns or ideas or thoughts that you'd like to share with the public, please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and limit your comments to about 3 minutes. These are for things that are not within our agenda or that are not public hearings. Time is yours. Okay, given that there isn't any, we'll close public comment and we will go to business item number 4. This is a site plan and conditional use permit for United Dance Center located at 1513 North Exchange Drive. Adam Lampert is the applicant, and we'll turn the time over to David Stroud for
I'm going to ask to come up here because I had down one monitor there, and I can see these ones easier. This was for Sarah Carroll, but she's out of the office this week, so I picked up this item to present to you. This is 2 components. One is the site plan approval, which the Planning Commission is the land use authority. There's also, because it's an educational center by the code, it is then a conditional use permit. So you would then forward on a recommendation of the conditional use permit to the City Council. Again, just what I mentioned there, at 1513 North Exchange Drive, Megan Hansen is here representing as the applicant. The site you see here is the lot located in blue. Quite a unique shaped lot. Not a whole lot you can do with it, and really only one location to put a building. The lot itself is 0.63 acres. It is currently lot 11A of the Saratoga Walmart amended subdivision. The zoning is regional commercial, as is the land use. The site plan will have a 5,100 square foot building with 21 parking stalls. Again, due to the nature of the property, it's one way in, one way out. There will not be any two-way access, as you'll see on the site plan. Again, an educational center requires a conditional use permit. They will also propose an access easement across the narrow neck of the property to access the property adjacent for future development. So the site plan you see here, the building south would be to your left. So really the only place to locate a building would be there. You see the narrow neck there on the right, that shaded area, that would be the access easement for any future development on that property. And of course you can see the way the parking stalls are configured, that is a one-way access, one way in, one way out. The landscape plan, flip that in your mind if you can, this is the way it was submitted to us, but again, the landscape in there's 13,000 square feet, which is 47%. Minimum requirements 20%, so they're 27% over, which is great. 8 trees are required, 12 are provided. There's actually going to be more when you consider the trees that are in the park strip that are already there. The park strip's already landscaped. Trees are already growing there. Linden trees and maple trees, I believe, are already planted. Shrubs, 14 required, 138 provided. 90% of the plants are drought tolerant. And again, the park strips are already landscaped. The elevations you see here, the elevations will consist of glass, stone, and stucco. The elevation maximum height is 28 feet 6 inches. And then the other sides as well. The top elevation you see there, that is a mechanical screen. The AC unit and whatnot are out there on the outside of the building there, so that screen is there by code to block visual, the vision of those. Lighting, parking lot light will be the bell-shaped downlight you see there with the pole combinations or the hook combinations you see there, and then the wall packs. I'd actually have to have the applicant go into a little further detail, which if all those wall packs are being used or not, I don't know. I didn't get a clarification from Sarah on that, but those are the lights in the lighting plan you see there. The signage, there will be 2 signs proposed for the building. The United Dance Center, one will be, of course, 50% smaller as the secondary sign, as is required by the code. Two building signs, one has to be 50%, as the secondary sign is 50% less of the main sign. And of course, staff recommends approval, and then recommends also forwarding a positive recommendation onto the City Council for the conditional use permit. We do have the findings and conditions you see there as contained in the staff report. And of course, the Planning Commission also has the alternative motion of continuation or denial of the request.
Thank you, David, for the presentation. Is the applicant here? Would you like to come forward and join us?
Which one do you want?
It's up to you. You can come, you can actually have a seat and make yourself comfortable. And if you wouldn't mind telling us your name and address for the record.
Adam Lambert with Rimrock Construction, and address is 11716 South 700 East in Draper.
Thank you, Adam. And
You want my home
yes,
address?
please.
Okay, Megan Hansen, 442 North Tioga Avenue, Saratoga Springs.
Good to have you, Megan. And Adam, did you have anything you wanted to add to the presentation tonight?
I don't think I've got anything to add. Certainly happy to answer any questions you guys may have, though, and Megan can help if you have anything related to the actual operations of the business.
Okay, so this is a business item, and thank you for that. We'll turn the time over to the Planning Commission so we can go over this. Commissioner Steele.
I have a question for staff. We have something in our code that says that you need a berm if your parking places face the street.
Yeah, if you, let me look at the site plan. Yeah, in this case, the parking stalls don't face the public street. When they're adjacent to a public street, yes, you have to have that berm either of earthen mound, or you can do shrubs or whatnot, as long as you get a 3-foot berm by shrubs. So since the parking stalls are interior to it, cars are pulling forward, they're not adjacent to the public street, so the berm's not needed. They do have to have a landscape buffer adjacent to that property on the other side, yes, but it does not have to be bermed.
Okay, the reason we do that is so that the car lights won't be shining out into the street, and they would the way that's
Right. Well,
situated.
if you look here, the car's going to come in here and pull forward. So this is the street here, so they're not going to be shining. They're going to be shining up in here, which is all.
No. The three that are,
Oh, excuse me, those three.
yes.
Yeah, those would have to have some vegetation. Let's see if we go to the landscape plan.
I don't see anything called it. Well, maybe I was on the wrong one.
There's a tree.
There's
Yeah,
a tree.
it's built up there.
Okay.
You could see the, switch mouses here. If you see the contour lines, that is built up, and there are some vegetation. We can certainly ask to put some other vegetation on there if that would suffice.
Just so it's not blinding somebody.
Good call. Thank you, Commissioner Steele. Any other comments? Commissioner Kilgore.
Since this is an administrative, I always ask the applicant if you're willing to comply with all the conditions in the city planning staff report.
Yes.
Okay, great. I also want to ask staff, so there was a traffic summary that was included, and it gave the results, but it didn't have any analysis as to whether those results are good or bad, or are they within the capacity, the current capacity of the location, et cetera. I'm just wondering if you have any insight into that.
Yeah, all that's required is, the first threshold we look at is, well, we ask for a trip generation study. And if the threshold is less than 100 trips per day, then we don't ask for anything more.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, so there's no need to mitigate traffic then. And also, I was wondering, what's a Knox lock and a Knox box?
That's the fire department. They require a box on the outside of the building with a key master to get into all of the building.
Okay.
That's on any commercial building.
Okay, sorry, that's the first time I saw that terminology. And then, thank you for making it so easy for us because of all the complies. You've just complied with everything that we need to see, and it just makes it so much easier for us to just approve without any issues. And so, thank you so much for doing that. Not every applicant does that. So, and then also welcome. My daughter's been dancing for 13 years. Unfortunately, she's graduating next year, so it's a little late, but just love to have a dance studio in our city. So thank you so much for coming. That's it.
I'll make a motion.
Well, I wanted to say a little something too. Yeah, what a complete and beautiful application. I don't think I've seen that many words, that many times of the copy complies in any application we've had in a long time. Also, congratulations on making something work with that really strange looking lot. So Sure, you're,
I might add, the engineering review sailed through, so we appreciated that.
One thing we're trying to do is, get a complete application, have very little as possible corrections to make or conditions above
Beautiful.
anything beyond the standard conditions.
all right. Well, for that reason, you're not going to be here long. I'd like to entertain a motion.
I move to approve the proposed site plan for the United Dance Center, and I move to forward a positive recommendation to the City Council for the proposed conditional use permit located at 1513 North Exchange Drive with all the findings and conditions.
The motion, Commissioner Anderson. Do we have a second?
Second.
Who wants
I
it?
second.
Commissioner Steele stole it. Second. Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Well, you didn't have any, we'll follow up on the trees there, so.
Perfect.
Thank you.
For your time.
Appreciate it, you guys.
All right.
I just want you to know that's my
All
first
right.
motion.
Let's go to business item number 5. This is a public hearing. It's an update to the standard technical specifications and drawings manual for the city of Saratoga Springs. Turn the time over to Gordon Miner for his presentation.
Hello, Commissioners. From time to time, seems more often than not, that we're updating the standards, making minor changes to better meet the needs of the development community and the city, and stay current with current practice. And so there are a couple of proposals tonight. One proposal, well, 3, I guess. One proposal is to reduce the minimum sewer slopes of pipelines to match the state standard. City standards were a little bit steeper. Another proposal is to reduce the minimum depth of cover over a sewer pipe from 4 feet to 3 feet. And another proposal is to allow on private streets the developer's geotechnical engineer's recommendations to be used for pavement design instead of the city standard. So I've already spoken to the slope. The reason why that is that's falling in line with state standards. The change from 4 feet to 3 feet, primarily about, or I should say the biggest concern is about frost depth. The frost depth in Saratoga Springs, according to the building code, is 30 inches. And so we're still staying below that. And this will be, allow a little more latitude for the development community when things get tight. And then for the pavement standard on private streets, the philosophy is there that it's, we've received a general request from the development community to look at that under the philosophy of private property. And with that, I'll entertain any questions.
Okay, this is a public hearing, so we'll turn the time over to our public and open the public hearing. Stan? Stan not having anything to say. We will close the public hearing and we'll open the comments to the Planning Commission. Commissioner Steele.
I am very concerned about letting the private engineer private streets. We've had a couple of instances in our area where those have not been done correctly and things have gone bad. One of them up on Traverse Mountain and the other one is up north. And I think it's where our former city manager has been at one time. It's around Ogden somewhere, and I can't think of the name of the community.
Washington Terrace?
Probably, yes.
That's where Mark worked, was Washington Terrace.
So anyway.
Oh, you're talking about a former city manager.
It's up in that area, and the hillside went sliding down.
We also have Highland or Alpine.
So I would, and I have also seen it where the private HOAs go defunct, and then the city has to take it back over. And I think in the staff report, this is assuming that the city would never have to take them back. I personally couldn't make that assumption. I don't think that any of them are going to go defunct in the next few years, but we don't know what's going to happen in the future, 30 years from now. What would we have? You know, the city could get back streets that were substandard, and they would have to go back in and try to retrofit them because there's no HOA anymore. So I think we should leave it the way it was and not take the recommendation.
Okay. Other comments?
Let's see. Yeah, okay, so same comment actually as Commissioner Steele. I was going to ask, isn't it possible that HOA with private streets could someday vote to make the streets public? I remember actually my own HOA, there was a meeting with that, for that discussion where the HOA, it wasn't that they were going bankrupt, but rather, or closing down, but rather they wanted to vote to see whether the streets should be made public. And so, just, you know, saving money, I guess. That was one of the things, one of the ways the HOA could save money was to turn the streets public. And then because the HOA, my HOA was formed before the city was formed, it was a private engineer who decided what the streets are going to look like, and the first phase is completely non-conforming. So, you know, I was just wondering, wouldn't that be a concern? And then
now this is just clarification.
Yeah.
We're strictly talking about the pavement design, not the geometry of the street or anything. We're just talking about the thickness of the asphalt, the road base, and pavement design.
That's true. I mean, yeah, because when I say non-conforming, I am talking just simply about the width and stuff like that. But it's probably also the asphalt as well, because well, anyway. So that's just a concern that I had, in that we did have that discussion and a meeting about whether we should, you know, vote for the streets to become public. And I don't even know if that's something that the city would even accept, but it just shows that there are instances where the HOA may just say, forget it, we don't want these streets anymore. So anyway, just wondering how you concerned about that. And then also, is there a need to say, so in let's see, page, right. In your, I don't think yours, oh, ST30, I think, yeah, ST, and on page ST30, as well as actually it's page ST30, and situations where the developer's geotechnical engineers' recommendations conflicts with the city's, I was wondering if maybe there's a need for us to say, for example, in situations where the developer's geotechnical engineers' recommendations conflicts with the city standards, then the former shall prevail, or, I mean,
so I'm sorry, I'm not seeing where you're reading that.
Okay.
Not either.
It's the one with the cross section of the grade.
ST30.
I was looking on ST30, it's not there.
Oh, okay. Then, mine says pages 42 and 43, but that's in the big staff report.
That would
If there happens
that's ST32.
Yeah, ST30.
Oh, is it 32? Sorry about that. Okay.
If there happens to be a provision somewhere else that doesn't harmonize with what is proposed here, then we would just catch up and grab that too. You know, if I happen to miss something, you know, if the Planning Commission forwards a positive recommendation on this and it goes on with the City Council, we know that idea has been approved, and if there's something in the standard somewhere that happened to get missed, we'll just, you know, make that harmonize with what was the intent was here.
Okay. Sorry, let me explain myself better. So on ST31 and ST32, the last number 6, under the notes, number 6, where it's redlined.
Yes.
It says pavement design may, at the developer's discretion, be according to developer's geotechnical engineer's recommendations.
Yes, and that is proposed new language.
Okay, so that's okay. I mean, I'm okay with that, but then I was wondering, what if their engineering standards conflicts with the city's? Shouldn't we say one prevails over the other?
That's what the clause "at the developer's discretion" means. It's the developer's choice to use which one they want.
Oh, I see.
I think what he's saying is, if the city wants to impose that their standards get used and not the developer, then do we have the ability to say, no, we want our standards to
Yeah,
be
because
upheld?
don't we worry about like fire trucks and
Garbage trucks
and
and-
garbage? Yeah, I mean, we have other things other than just what they're looking for. And if they just decide to do something that's smaller than our truck or higher than our fire trucks can, you know what I mean, or further
Yes,
away.
so the intent of this is to let them do what they want. So with their geotechnical engineer's recommendation.
Yeah.
And we've put the clause in here, at the developer's discretion. If they want to follow the city standards, they're welcome to do that. But the intent of this provision is to let them follow their own geotechnical engineer's recommendations.
So then
So Gordon, if I may interrupt for a second.
Yeah.
Gordon and I discussed this. I said, you either have, the first version of this said that the city engineer had to approve the geotechnical's recommendations. However, it didn't really give any standards for approval or denial. Just said the geotechnical engineer is going to come up with a pavement design and city engineer can look at that and approve it or not. That, as you know, is arbitrary and capricious language because the city engineer could say, I don't like this, I don't like the pavement design because I'm the geotechnical engineer, what did I say? Geotechnical engineer and I don't get along. And so that can be a problem. There has to be minimum standards, and so in response, this is the language that was drafted, but I think that what the Planning Commission is telling you, Gordon, is that they're not comfortable with that. And they can't make a positive recommendation on that.
I just
There has to
wonder-
be minimum standards established, and
Yeah.
the idea of this was to relax our standards because we have a very high pavement design requirement, which is good, and it's tried and tested, but it's also very expensive.
I'm just worried about, relaxing is okay, especially if it doesn't matter, and I don't know, maybe geotechnical, there are things that really matter, but then there are things that also matter, like trucks, city trucks and services and stuff. So that's where I thought that there should be some kind of a safety, just in case. If their engineer just says that, let's just do a 11-foot driveway or something like that, or
Well, remember, we're not talking about geometry.
Yeah,
We're only talking about pavement thickness.
That's true. But even then, right? I mean, what if our trucks get heavier and heavier, and so the asphalt has to keep, or it has to keep up to. I mean, we even had I can't remember. It was for a private driveway for some residential construction. We were wondering if that driveway can support the weight of the fire trucks. We asked about that question, and so that's why I just wonder if there should be some kind of a minimum floor somewhere.
Well,
So similar to a structural engineer who signs off on some design, if it fails, they have liability against them, and their name's on it, and there's recourse against them, right? But if this fails, then does the city have any recourse to go back to the developer? And I doubt it.
Well, it's private property, so the city wouldn't have standing in that.
Okay.
Well, that's a good question, and mostly development is, we're not liable for that, and if anything, we do have language on the plat that covers us, but that's not to say that cities have not been sued over things like this. But it is our job to ensure that they comply with minimum standards, and so it sounds like kind of the consensus is you're not comfortable with that.
Is
And I
there
would
a
just suggest
minimum
that-
standard?
With that, you're not comfortable with not having a minimum standard. You're not okay with just relying on the geotechnical report. And so,
There's like a whole different.
the geotechnical.
Yeah,
engineer.
there's a whole different motivation for from that
Cut
So-
costs,
so
cut costs to
from
make money.
potentially.
From an engineering
Best- Oh, sorry.
From an
Sorry.
engineering standpoint,
Go ahead.
there's no minimum, the city defines a minimum, But from an engineering standpoint, every engineer would look at the soil conditions, look at the anticipated loading, including city trucks and all of those things, and they would come up with a pavement design that theoretically, under good engineering practice, would work. So I don't see it so much as an engineering question, it's a policy question about, it really is, it's a policy question on how the city wants to go forward.
And as a policy question, are we considered to be difficult? Is that why we were trying to relax? Is that what the impetus is?
Or is it to remove the potential lawsuit from, because it's capricious?
The only thing I had heard, and Gordon can speak, but I just heard on one project that it was, and so actually several projects, that it's an expensive design. So I mean, Gordon's been dealing with everyone, but that's what I've heard, is it's expensive, and trying to give them an alternative here.
Commissioner Steve.
That's fair to say.
Go ahead, Commissioner Steve.
I hate to say this, but if you think about business practices, the engineer is hired by the developer. And the developer says, I want to go as cheap as I can. And we're opening up the door for that. If we approve this the way it's written, I will never be comfortable with that. I have seen HOAs in California that went defunct, and actually their park, they said, we don't want it, we can't maintain it, and they sold it to the city, and it became a house, so there was no park there anymore. The same thing can happen with streets. I will just never be comfortable with that. To me, if it isn't broke, don't fix it, and I think our city standards have been proven to be good, sound, and we haven't had problems.
I would like to hear from Gordon, though. Give us an example where it would be beneficial to relax the standard.
It's a question of who would benefit.
Okay.
So like I said, it's
help us with a scenario so we understand this.
Kind of what I just said. It'll be the developer that gets the benefit because it'll be cheaper.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in my introduction, it really is that simple, I believe. It was a request that we've received from the general development community. The opinion is that the city's standard is ultra-conservative, and they believe that their geotechnical engineers are coming up with adequate pavement designs, and those are less expensive, and they'd rather use those.
Have you compared our city standards to those of cities around us?
Yes.
And what were your results?
Comparable. There's a question about what we call super pave. It's a type of asphalt mix, type of asphalt cement that is a little more expensive, but in terms of economy, bang for the buck, return on the investment, it's inexpensive, and the city's chosen to pursue that.
But they pay for it, and then we get the bang for the buck, right? Because we end up maintaining everything. So
yes.
For them, it's just expensive, whereas for us, it's good. It is a good ROI.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the idea is it's not that much more expensive, that particular asphalt cement.
And the code as it currently stands wouldn't allow for that? Wouldn't?
Oh, it does. The city standard does.
Okay. So what I'm trying to justify in my mind is, why do we make the change?
It was under the idea of private property. For example, commercial parking lots. We don't regulate their pavement designs. So this policy right here is in play right now on every commercial parking lot that you see in the city.
Okay, and this applies to private property only?
Private streets. That's what you see. It's only on the private street sections.
I mean, I think what I'm hearing as a consensus is that we would feel more comfortable with a minimum standard. So maybe this needs a little more thought, or.
I've got some questions on a couple of the other items.
Sure.
We talk about the depth, moving from 4 feet to 3 feet, the minimum is 30 inches. This would still be a 36. And I assume there's some cost savings for a developer to not have to trench down to 4 feet, but only to 3 feet. Is that the reason for it? Is that excessive to them as well?
No, it's not about cost savings of, it's not about cost of excavation. It's about feasibility of some sites.
Okay.
So for example, east of the Jordan River is so flat out there. And a foot means a lot to those folks who are designing sewer systems out there. So it's not about cost of excavation, it's about feasibility. Okay. And being able to get a little more slope.
Okay. I just wonder if sometimes, if it were a cost thing, I was thinking, 3 feet to 4 feet, you're right, you don't have to go to 4 feet, but at 3 feet, do you have more problems or more maintenance, more times hitting the sewer line, or more times, I don't know.
Well, so the biggest concern is conflicts with city water lines, conflicts with the pressurized irrigation and drinking water lines, which are at about that same depth.
At 4 feet or 3 feet?
At
4 feet.
4. But mind you, this minimum depth would only occur at the one end of the pipeline. Then it, gradually goes down. So, we might be 3 feet here, but somewhere down in here, then we're in the 4 feet range. Whereas if it were the old standard, we'd begin at 4 feet and then go a little deeper. So we're below that window of the pressurized water lines. Developers are aware of that, and they're aware that they would have to spend more money in looping pressurized water lines under that sewer in case there was a conflict.
Okay.
So I would I think this particular standard would be implemented rarely, and I think you're probably going to see it out there east of the Jordan River because it's so flat out there.
I just wonder if you leave it as by exception. There are exceptions which can be granted but not make it a new standard. I don't know.
Well, the dilemma, as Kevin mentioned, we don't like to leave something to the discretion of the city engineer. Okay. That puts the city engineer in a difficult spot.
There'd have to be criteria
Yeah.
of why you would allow them a variance in the standard code. But it actually wouldn't be a variance if you'd add it to the code. It would just be a criteria. You can do it in these instances.
Yeah, you just have to provide minimum requirements, so it doesn't come down to the city engineer is, enemies with the geotechnical engineer or any other, number of arbitrary reasons or even discriminatory reasons.
In the event that a property has less than a 2% slope gradient, then they have the ability to go to a 3-foot depth of sewer. I don't know, something like that.
Well, I mean, you can give them the option, right? But it's their discretion, not the city engineer's discretion. If the city engineer has discretion, it has to be within parameters, so that can't be abused in an arbitrary or discriminatory way.
So I've vetted this with the Public Works Department. They don't have a problem with the depth issue.
The one thing that made me feel more comfortable is they've taken out the 10% error of design grade, and so they don't get the slough anymore if they go to the 3 feet, and I was comfortable with that because of that it's been taken out.
Yeah, so the reason that was taken out is because if we're going to go to those minimum slopes from the state standard, those really are absolute minimums, and we're not adding 10% wiggle room on top of that.
I'm okay with that as well.
Normally, my feeling is I'm not going to tell Gordon how to do his job. I'm not an engineer. And so I'm not an expert in that field, and normally my commentary would be just commentary. So
Yeah, and I agree.
I'm not going to tell you how to do this, and I did sense that they wanted a minimum standard for the road,
And like I say,
design,
the pavement thing is really a policy question. It's not so much an engineering question.
Well, it's just, and again, I was actually at the meeting where our HOA was considering to make the streets public again, and that's why I think that
Well, it's just-
that statement about, and again, I was actually it's unlikely for private streets to come back to the city. I didn't really find that to be accurate because I even lived through something like that. And that could always, we turned it down then, that was about 5-6 years ago, but it could always come up anytime. The next recession happens and they might bring it up again. So, I don't see, and that's a huge HOA too. It's really big. So that's why I thought, in the past we've changed some of our minimum standards as the city grew, and we've had requests from developers, like I think our height in the commercial areas that changed because of, it's just that, well, we picked a standard at one point and it changes. So I'm all for that, keeping up with what's going on, but I do feel like probably from a policy point of view that we have to have some kind of maybe a minimum, because those kinds of things could happen.
Understandable.
So would you?
Yeah, that's a legitimate concern, so I would just suggest making that as a condition of your recommendation.
That's what I was going to say. Any other comments about these proposed changes? Okay, so did you want to reach a consensus of what we want to do as far as a recommendation and this? All right, then I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, let me get it up here.
I didn't put the page number on there, but
It's ST31 and ST32.
Right, I was just looking for the motion. Is there one? I thought Gordon gave us one, but I'm not finding it.
yeah, I wrote it down, but I don't know where I wrote it.
It disappeared on
Be
me.
at the bottom of my staff report.
Yeah, it's on page 36 in the big packet.
Okay, I don't have the big packet, and I don't have his staff report. It's not coming up. So anyway, if somebody's got a better motion, then go ahead.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to that page. If I shake it, maybe it'll go faster. Okay, 4 more pages. Okay. So what do I need to do on there? It's just like a minimum standard for the number 3. Okay. I move to forward a positive recommendation to the City Council for these proposed revisions to the city's standard technical specifications and drawings, as in the city engineer's staff report, with the condition that number 3, private pavement designs on private streets, include a minimum requirement, so that, a minimum requirement.
Or minimum, sorry, we'll do it the right way.
Is that-
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I've got a question on it. I'll
Well,
second it, but
we'll
I've
do
got
that after. Okay. We have a question on the motion, Commissioner Steele.
We already have minimum standards. Gordon, don't we have minimum standards already?
For city streets, yes.
Therefore, I think we just eliminate number 6 on both of the 31 and 32, ST 31 and 32. Because we already have the minimum standards.
We have a motion on the table. Is that amenable?
Yeah, but then that doesn't solve the problem that the city engineer is trying to resolve. Which
No,
is
he's not trying to resolve that.
Well, I mean, it's the idea that we are more difficult to work with, and
I worked in the development community, and they're going to say that about everything.
Well,
I don't buy it.
perhaps he could look at the minimum standard, and if we wanted to relax the minimum standard or bring that standard up a little bit or lower it, that would be something that we'd bring forward, and then We could deal with that then.
I'm concerned because if we have to take it back for any reason, then they need to be the minimum standards of the city to become a city street. And that's the reason I think we already have the minimum standards, so we don't need more minimum standards, because then if we had different ones than the city streets, then if we had to take over any streets, they would not be up to city standards.
I agree. I think, and then what Commissioner Wilkins just said as well, so that this should be handled not by allowing private engineers full reign, but rather by adjusting our standards. So I amend my motion and say that we remove.
So you're probably just saying to leave ST 30, 31,
Hold on a second.
and 32 alone.
Let him finish.
Hold on, Gordon, let him do it.
Apologies.
Yeah.
No problem.
So I move to forward a positive recommendation to the City Council for these proposed revisions to the city's.
Hold on. Are you creating a new motion?
Oh, no, I'm just restating my motion with the
Okay.
with the corrected part. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Revisions to the city standard technical specifications of drawings as written in the city engineer's staff report, with the condition that we remove note number 6 from ST 31 and ST 32.
I think you mean 30 also.
Is there one on 30?
ST 30 is in play also.
Oh, and that's number 3.
And ST 30, note number 3.
Okay, let's not interrupt while the motion and the second is happening, and then we can do questions after that. We have an amended motion. Do we have a second on the amended?
I second.
We do. Any questions on the motion?
I apologize. So just to clarify, we're just talking about leaving ST 30, ST 31, and ST 32 alone. We're just
Can I ask a
not
question
changing them.
as well?
Just a minute.
We have a second.
Is that
That's
is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
On these other ones, are these adjustments or changes where you say, we're gonna make the slopes not as steep as they have to be anymore, and we're gonna bring this pipe up from 4 feet to 3 feet? Are those to accommodate the unique nature of our flat part of the city? Is that what that's for?
Yes.
And do you anticipate there being that creating complications anywhere else where these, I don't know,
Like a sloped area?
yeah, I don't know.
Like a what?
Like an area that has higher
accommodating
slopes?
this flat area out here, out east of the city, does that jeopardize or
Cause problems to
Yeah.
non-flat areas.
right? Are we creating a challenge anywhere else by loosening up the standards out for the east side of the city? Does that make sense?
I don't believe so. For the most part, developers want basements, and they want the sewer deep enough to have basements. So the vast majority of the time, they're not even going to be trying to do this. Out on that part of town, groundwater is so high,
Right, they can't have it.
basements don't work. It's very flat. Slope is at a premium out there. And so in applications like that, this sort of standard is
Totally
appropriate.
irrelevant, okay.
I'll just add that more slope for sewer particularly is advantageous. And
Wow.
nobody's going to go the minimum if they can get more slope. It's a lot easier.
Okay, so that's been a lot of questions. Do we have any other questions on the motion? Remember, we did that a while ago. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously with condition.
Thank you.
Gordon. All right.
Minutes.
I don't think we need a break, so I'll get you back. Okay. And you don't want to. All right. Move to item number 6. This is approval of minutes for January 24th, 2019. I've looked at them. They look fine. Everybody else looked at the meeting minutes?
Yes.
I'll entertain a motion on the minutes. Item number 6.
I move that we approve the minutes of the meeting of Thursday, January the 24th, 2019, as written.
I
We have a
second.
motion. Commissioner Steele. Second.
Second.
Seconded Commissioner Anderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Reports of action.
None.
Commission comments. Director's report. Do you have a report? Commissioner Stroud? I'm sorry. Director Stroud.
Just to let you know about an application that recently came in down the corner of Pioneer Crossing and Redwood Road, that northeast corner. We've got an application to rezone the property to office warehouse and regional commercial. There's a two-story and three-story building looking to go in there. And so we're in the process right now of looking at the concept plan, and that will come to you shortly for a recommendation to the council for general plan amendment and rezone.
All right. Any other items in director's report?
Another application, it's a small one, but a four-lot subdivision down along the golf course. There's some property there that is suitable for development. Actually, I think it's a five-lot, a five-lot subdivision on improved roads. And so that will be coming to you at some point as well.
Is that for housing or for?
Housing, single-family housing, yeah. Called Talon's Clutch.
They're nice-sized lots.
Okay, we have an item number 10. This is a discussion of City Code Title 19.01.
Yes, this will be the first. We're limiting to 10 minutes, right? So anything you want to discuss on this chapter? This is a lot of the legalese type stuff, I think. Establishes some guidelines and parameters for the rest of the code. And so if there's anything specifically you want to talk about, we can bring that up and discuss that.
So I read through it, and it does sound like it was written by a lawyer, and I don't know that there are anything, I mean, the targets that we were planning on going after, and we're trying to go through the code systematically. I don't know that the targets are found in this spot, but maybe
Yes,
I could be wrong.
It was written by a lawyer.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. Was it you?
Well, most of 1901 was, yeah, back when we, yeah. So I apologize for that.
I heard from a wise lawyer once. He says, "What two lawyers put together, let no man put asunder." So, anyway.
I thought this one was a good one to start with, really, because it gives us the parameters that we are looking at when we look at projects.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you find some of the things that I've brought up in the past. And so I thought it was, yeah, it was a simple one, but I thought it was a good one.
I do have a question.
Please.
Okay. For 19.01.11, so that's the permits and licenses. So permits and licenses that met requirements of title in effect at the time of issuance need not be revoked if the title changes at a later time. Is that right? Because I don't think that's clear in the paragraph itself about permits and licenses issued at a specific point in time, and then the title changes later. So what happens to those old permits and licenses?
Can you tell me that section number again?
Yeah,
I thought you said 11, and I.
It is 19.01.11.
Let me bring it up on the big screen here.
Permits and licenses. Right, because it talks about permits and licenses issued by this title, and who has the authority to deny. But what about permits and licenses that were issued before the title changed, if a title were to change? What happens?
Oh, you mean before a code change?
Yeah, so like grandfathering.
That's considered a non-conforming use under state law. We actually also define non-conforming lot or use, but we don't really define it. We just defer to state statute.
Okay.
So there's a lot of things in here we can't regulate. We'd have a 10,000 page document right?
Right.
So those other things that are regulated by state code, state law, case law, with respect to non-conforming uses, that's defined by state law and case law.
So, okay, if
Those would be non-conforming uses that are grandfathered in. If they're ever expanded on, they lose their non-conforming status and then become illegal, basically, because they don't meet the code.
So where is that? So if I'm a person who received a permit or a license from the city under a title that has changed, and I read this, it doesn't say anything about what happens to me. So where does it say what you just said about it being grandfathered or being a non-conforming, that's whatever? Where do I go? I would have gone here first, and then it doesn't say anything about that. It only says about,
Yeah.
permits and licenses that were issued at the, now, under the current title, not about previous titles.
Yeah, we didn't really define too much with we didn't deal too much with non-conforming, because that's basically defined by state law, but definition,
Maybe you just put that in there?
non-conforming building lot means a parcel of land of record that was lawfully subdivided and in compliance with the laws at the time of the division and no longer meets the minimum requirements for a building lot. Like I said, I guess sure, we could add some language there, but we really can't regulate every last thing.
I'm not asking about that.
So,
I guess I'm asking if I have a permit or license that was issued by a previous title, where do I go? I mean, because this says that, this says that licenses or permits can be denied if it doesn't conform to the title, but then my permit or license no longer conforms to the title, so does it get denied or not? Where do I go to find that out? I'm not talking about the regulation of it. I'm talking about, if it says that, it doesn't cover all the licenses and permits that were issued before on a previous title.
okay. Yeah, we can add that clarification, sure.
Yeah, and I don't think also that our review was meant to try to change code, right? It was just simply for us to learn about what's in the code.
It could be
so this is just a note that we take, and then it doesn't have to be changed until we do it.
Well, another thing too to keep in mind is the fire code and building code, or the fire official and the building official can actually revoke permits even when it does comply with this Title 19.
Oh, okay.
Building codes and fire codes are separate and independent. If there's a serious life safety risk, they can revoke a permit.
Okay.
Okay, the one thing I can think of on that one is if you have a permit to have a home-based business, the way I understand it, it stays with the property, not with the property owner. And then some of our rules have changed, and some of these permits that have been given for home occupations are grandfathered, the way I understand it, but that it would run with the land, not with the person. Is that correct?
I think with any land use approval, it runs with the land, unless there's a separate development agreement that limits that to just one particular owner. But otherwise, approvals do run with the land. Non-conforming uses do as well.
If it's a home use, it's contingent on the square footage of the home, and it wouldn't go with the person. It would,
Right. So,
we could have a development agreement, and sometimes we do that. We're comfortable with one particular developer doing a certain project, and it's between us and the developer, and it doesn't run with the land, and you would specify that in contract. But otherwise, a lot of that stuff does in fact run with the land.
Yeah. So I brought up my comment not to ask anything to be changed, but rather when the time comes, maybe that's something that's considered.
We can just put it on a list and start that as the process, and at the appropriate time, then pursue that.
okay. Any other discussion on this?
I have a question of staff before we close the meeting.
Hurry. I'm just kidding. Go ahead. Just go ahead.
The legislature that's, one of the bills that's going through, I think it's 134, Andrig, and it's on the affordable housing. Isn't he just trying to make it easier for the cities with this bill? The bill was already there, and he's just amending it, was the way I understood it, but I saw somebody was quite upset.
Senate Bill 34,
Yes.
affordable housing modifications. I can give you a summary of it right here.
But he's not proposing a whole new section. He's just
No,
trying to clean
yeah.
up.
Yeah, let me just read what the Utah League of Cities and Towns has put together. It says, SB 34, bill name Affordable Housing Modifications, bill sponsor is Senator Anderegg, modifies provisions related to a municipality's and a county's general plan, defines terms, modifies the requirements of certain municipalities and counties related to the moderate income housing plan element of the general plan, modifies provisions related to the use of transportation investment fund money, modifies provisions related to the Olin Walker Housing Loan Fund Board, and makes technical changes.
I just saw a change come through that bothered me a little bit because it had been that the moderate income figures were based on the municipality, what was the average, the figures for like for Saratoga Springs. Now they have cut that out, and that is a little bit of a concern.
What are they using then as their basis?
They don't say. They leave it out there. I'm sure they're going to do it by the state, but that's not fair to some of the cities. And so I didn't know whether to write Anderegg and say, hey, I really don't like that modification.
Yeah, I know this one's going to be heavily followed by the league. This is one of the highlight bills they've sent to us.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Without objection, we adjourn.